I am live. Hello, folks. I am, as always, your host, Rogan Marshall, Joe Rogan's famous golden retriever, here in my spare time, in my alt avatar, disguised as a middle aged balding dude. I'm here to read Lovecraft. Actually, I think tonight is going to be the last. I may be wrong, but I think what's left of the Shadow Out of Time is about an hour's reading, and it's really the last major story. I have skipped, of course, probably a third to a half of the collected Lovecraft. I may come back to it after Lovecraft. I have this collection, Foundations of Fear. That's over there somewhere, of classic horror stories. I'm going to read some of those over the next several nights coming up to New Year's. But tonight we're finishing up Lovecraft. Thanks for being here for these streams, everybody. I see that like the numbers on the first two Shadow Out of Time streams popped over the course of today, and I just realized just now that's because it's Christmas. You guys were catching up with me. Thank you. I've turned off the monetization for the live reading as always. If you would like to contribute to the cause, paypal.me/Roganautica in the pinned comments is the best way to give me money. If you give me donations through the YouTube, they split that money with me. The PayPal link goes straight to me. Thanks for being here, guys. Oh, right. I was reading this odd, very lengthy dystopian. I stopped before the end of the chapter, huh? Really? I must have been distracted by the conversation in the hall. I didn't realize I had done that. No, I didn't read that. Okay. All right, I'll just back up to the top of the page. I remember now, this was this lengthy description of this odd sort of utopian fascist society with the alien monsters Lovecraft describes. I can't remember whether these are the great ones or the other ones. The Shadow Out of Time concluded in this reading, as is the series of Lovecraft readings for now. Thanks for having been here. Resemblances to human attitudes and institutions were, of course, most marked in those fields where, on the one hand, highly abstract elements were concerned, or where, on the other hand, there was a dominance of the basic, unspecialized urges common to all organic life. A few added likenesses came through conscious adoption as the great race probed the future and copied what it liked. Industry, highly mechanized, demanded but little time from each citizen, and the abundant leisure was filled with intellectual and aesthetic activities of various sorts. The sciences were carried to an unbelievable height of development, and art was a vital part of life, though at the period of my dreams it had passed its crested meridian. Technology was enormously stimulated through the constant struggle to survive and to keep in existence the physical fabric of great cities imposed by the prodigious geologic upheavals of those primal days. Crime was surprisingly scanty and was dealt with through highly efficient policing. Punishments ranged from privilege deprivation and imprisonment to death or major emotion wrenching. Right, I remember that. I'm not sure what he means by that. Sounds like he had some complicated idea that he didn't quite work out. Major emotion wrenching. And were never administered without a careful study of the criminal's motivations. Warfare, largely civil for the last few millennia, though sometimes waged against reptilian and octopodic invaders, or against the winged, star-headed old ones who centered in the Antarctic, was infrequent, though infinitely devastating. Okay, the great ones and the old ones are two different... All right, I know I'm the Lovecraft expert. I really thought it was the great old ones. I really thought that was one thing. I really am. I not only have set myself up as a Lovecraft expert in here, but I really am a Lovecraft. Like, I'm not kidding. It seems a minor point to me. Great ones, old ones. I don't know. They're funny looking. They're real funny looking. Only one of them has bat wings. That's how you would recognize them if they're coming at you, like in combat rounds. Is that a cat trying to get in? Is that what that noise is? Yes. No. There's no cat trying to get in. I hallucinated that. Please tell me there's a cat in the litter, but yes, okay. Pylack is trying to dig a hole in the carpet in front of the litter box because that's how good a cat she is. She's trying to help. She's a helper. The kind that Mr. Rogers suggests we look for. Where was I? Right. Right, the old ones and the great ones are two different guys. If I was really a professor, I would be in trouble now. I would get written up. They would be like, Professor Marshall, look, we hired you to do one thing, and that's be the Lovecraft expert. And here we find that you thought old ones and great ones were the same ones. It's not that so much as I just didn't care. They're weird. They're both funny looking. Okay, talking alien monster things from outer space all look the same to me. Okay, it's a personal prejudice. Okay, I love Lovecraft. I am overwhelmed with personal prejudices, like not being able to tell great ones and old ones apart from each other. All right. One has bat wings. Okay, I will remember that. I don't remember whether it's these guys. I guess it's the other. Oh, right. The ones in Antarctica. The winged, star-headed old ones who centered in the Antarctic were infrequent, though infinitely devastating. An enormous army. Pie whack it. Pie, stop. You cannot dig a hole in the floor back there. Pie. Pie whack it. Pie. Stop. Pie. Stop. Pie. Hey. Stop doing that. I know. I'll clean up the litter, all right? Pyewacket, when she wants me to clean up the litter box, she digs at the side of the bureau. It's in the corner there behind the bureau. She digs at the bureau and the wall until I come over and look, and then she glares at me while she's digging at the wall. I'm like, see what you've made me do. Hey, Turbo Christ. How are you? Right. An enormous army using camera-like weapons which produced tremendous electrical effects was kept on hand for purposes seldom mentioned, but obviously connected with the ceaseless fear of the dark, windowless elder ruins and of the great sealed trapdoors in the lowest subterranean levels. The camera-like weapons which produced tremendous electrical effects and punishments ranged to major emotion wrenching. It totally sounds like he mentally worked out a lot more details of this like weird alien utopia dystopia societal like, buddy, pie whack it, why are you being a little bitch? All right, I'll let you out, but don't do this anymore. You know I'm reading. I know, it's all right, buddy. I'm not going to leave it open. You got to go out. There you go. Merry Christmas, Gandalf. How are ya? Yeah, I was gonna say it seems like he's worked out this dystopian. So his model for this, by the way, the weird semi-dystopian, semi-utopian, like fascist socialist society with the alien monsters that are really freaky and not human but thinking. The model for this is actually in The Food of the Gods by H.G. Wells. Food of the Gods by H.G. Wells gets really distracted by explaining the society and structure of the society of the ant people that live inside the moon. And it's a great novel, except kind of for that. It does exactly what this passage is doing. It's interesting, but not that interesting, and it goes on for way too long. Like he just thought about it way too much. It's um You think The Shadow Out of Time is the one you read way back in the depths of time? Gandalf, he does this thing like what Robert Howard did with the Conan stories too, where he circles around themes from earlier stories in such a way that they tend to blend together. When I broke all of it down to write a Lovecraft screenplay, I found that stuff dovetailed into stuff in weird ways that like this idea of recurrence across time. Um, um, there's a couple of earlier stories that do the. It's funny because I just read them out loud and they're already blending together in my mind because it was a week or two ago. Um, there's at least one where reading this, I thought like this is sort of a straight remake of the earlier story. And Charles Dexter Ward has the reincarnation thing, which is similar to this, where he's two different guys. And Charles Dexter Ward echoes Rats in the Walls. Um, um, Turbo, you should look up the rock art made by Richard Shaver. Richard Shaver was a pulp writer who was a highly functioning schizophrenic. He's kind of famous for his pulp fiction. I remember Lemuria. His pulp fiction is really good. It's very underrated. But later, Shaver, he had this schizophrenic idea that the history of the universe, this Lovecraftian history of the universe, like a vast uh, universe spanning chronology of wars among alien species in space, it's written in the rocks of the planet in pictures everywhere. And you can access these pictures by slicing the rock. And so there are these, like, look up Richard Shaver rock art. He used industrial rock cutting equipment to slice rock thin enough to backlight it. And then he would paint on the sliced rock and sort of bring out these weird, glowing, schizophrenic science fiction horror landscapes that are just astonishing. They're great. And he self-published a very expensive art book called something like the Invisible World or the Hidden World in the early 1950s. And they didn't sell any of them, which means that it's not that valuable now. Like nobody knows about this book. You can still get this book for just a couple of hundred. The original, like, because they had it privately printed at such time that meant Shaver and his collaborator had like boxes of them at the house for until somebody wanted them. He's definitely grabbing from somewhere that's tangible. Yeah, well, Richard Shaver's work also dovetails into the 411. I'd like to read some Richard Shaver in here, but part of the action with Richard Shaver is in the letters columns. So you guys probably know about David Paulides and the 411. If you don't know about David Paulides and the 411, I'm not going to explain that here, but look up the short page on Wikipedia about that, and you'll see how it connects to this. Richard Shaver was a highly functioning schizophrenic. I've read a couple of biographies of him. Seems like I don't know whether he needed to be medicated or what. He seems like he was pretty stable, just a little bit visionary. His first pulp novel, like he had these very odd ideas about the structure of the world and the universe, and he decided to embed them in science fiction and pulp fiction. If I'm remembering right, it's Amazing Stories that he published in. But they promoted his work like it was nonfiction, like it's visionary nonfiction. In the internet era, this does not seem that strange. In the 1920s, it was very strange. Like it was unique. Part of the idea with Richard Shaver's stories is that there are intelligent intelligent beings that are not quite physically present, both higher and lower than people. The dark evil things like people that are not people are called Deros, and they live underground, and they can pretend to be people, and they can imitate voices. Sometimes they can exercise control over people and cause them to do things using waves or rays from under the ground. They live in the woods often. If you know about David Paulides in the 411, this sounds familiar. So they started publishing these stories, and the letters column of Amazing Stories lit the fuck up. Now, this I've not actually been able to read, um, but I've read descriptions of it, that as soon as they started publishing the stories about the Darrows, imitating people, making people disappear, voices in the woods, they live underground, they control people with rays from underground, you can hear them underground. The letters columns lit up with hundreds of apparently more or less sane or more or less crazy people saying, yes, these things are real. The Darrows have been fucking around. In fact, they are on my farm. We have trouble with the Darrow. Like I said, the exact same social phenomenon as the Paulides 411 thing that is all over the internet now. Um, the two editors at Amazing Stories went to loggerheads over this because I can't remember who these historical figures are, but the guy who's the famous one of the creators of modern science fiction who ran Amazing Stories, was bullshit mad at all this like mystical weirdo. It's not really fiction or nonfiction, encouraging the crazies to write into the letters column stuff. So they ended up splitting it off into two magazines. And the guy who worked with Shaver started publishing Fate. Fate magazine still exists to this day, and it's a great magazine. It's a digest size magazine about paranormal phenomenon. It's really good. It's not quite as good as the Fortean Times, but it's really good. Um, were any of those in the issues in the late 60s or early 70s? In the 60s and 70s, Richard Shaver had this reputation for being just absolute garbage, um, because he's not because of this mystical streak, right? Real science fiction readers thought he um, hey Zion, real science fiction readers, like I said, it split off into Fate magazine, and real science fiction readers thought this schizo stuff was schizo. This idea that there's a gray space in between fiction and nonfiction, you don't need to worry about how crazy it is to read and enjoy it. It was ahead of its time. I think his writing's really good. I've read his first two short novels. I had a book independently published called I Remember Lemuria and the Shaver Mystery that had his first two short novels and then a carefully researched short novel length essay about the history of underground civilizations and societies in science fiction, got into Lovecraft and other writers. But Deros, spelled Dero. It stands for de-evolution or de-evolved something. De-evolved robots, because the idea is they can disguise themselves as people, but they're not people. Some of this stuff is like Men in Black stuff too. Um, and yeah, that like you it is like the Paulides 411 thing. Like you look at this, you give it a very cursory glance and think about your own experiences with weird, unexplained stories people have told you, and you're like, okay, hold on. He might have been crazy, and there's a lot of crazy talk here, but this stuff about Darrows living in the woods, disguising it, like I'm not sure that's entirely like the Darrows might be real. I'm not sure they're not real. We just are calling them skinwalkers now. And the disappearances are the 411. Yeah, Gandalf Darrows get referred to in the literature fairly regular. Um, I don't know. I'm definitely going to get into reading some Richard Shaver live in these late night streams, but I just don't have my shit set up to print out documents from the internet yet. This is almost certainly something where all of it's been scanned in. The book I read that reprinted two of his stories was a self-published thing, and probably really valuable. Now all my books are lost. The I read a biography of him called, I think, The Man from Mars, that was really interesting. That was about him and his lifelong friendship with the editor at Fate magazine. They both got rich off of Shaver's stories, and it's interesting because they both clearly understood that he was a highly functioning schizophrenic. Um, the way they would answer for how real this stuff was complex. Both of them. He wasn't so schizo. He wasn't happily married. He was happily married. He bought a house. He was a stable guy, Shaver. Um, so he had a high rate of paranormal activity. Well, yeah, I mean that's another thing too. You read these kind of stories online, and like sometimes the credible stories about supernatural stuff are coming from people who are clearly not so. Like, it's not like it's like the way my little sister was a hypochondriac, but eventually she had Crohn's. Like maybe she knew, but one way, like it doesn't. Maybe they were connected actually. Your library is gone to now. It wasn't much about 500 books. You still reading? Yeah, I'm about to get back to reading the rest of this Lovecraft story. I'm going to stop being distracted, you guys. Schizophrenic people are basically normal except their visual aperture is blown out. Yeah, it's a chemical thing. Yeah. And the two or three people I know who are really schizophrenic who function well enough to interact, like they'll it's hard to get them going about it. That they'll be like, yeah, there's stuff that's real that I'm seeing that other people aren't seeing, but mostly not. And it won't do to parse too closely because you just go mad thinking about how mad you are. um, Yes, I got distracted talking about Food of the Gods by H.G. Wells, which I also recommend. Let me get back to the story. Sorry, guys. The fear of the basalt ruins and trap doors was largely a matter of unspoken suggestion, or at most of furtive quasi-whispers. Everything specific which bore on it was significantly absent from such books as were on the common shelves. It was the one subject lying altogether under a taboo among the great race, and seemed to be connected alike with horrible bygone struggles, and with that future peril which would some day force the race to send its keener minds ahead en masse in time. Imperfect and fragmentary as were the other things presented by dreams and legends, this matter was still more bafflingly shrouded. The vague old myths avoided it, or perhaps all allusions had for some reason been excised, and in the dreams of myself and others the hints were peculiarly few. Members of the great race never intentionally referred to the matter, and what could be gleaned came only from some of the more sharply observant captive minds. According to these scraps of information, the basis of the fear was a horrible elder race of half polypus, utterly alien entities, which had come through space from immeasurably distant universes and had dominated the Earth and three other solar planets about 600 million years ago. They were only partly material, as we understand matter, and their type of consciousness and media of perception differed wholly from those of terrestrial organisms. For example, their senses did not include that of sight, their mental world being a strange, non-visual pattern of impressions. They were, however, sufficiently material to use implements of normal matter when in cosmic areas containing it, and they required housing, albeit of a peculiar kind. Though their senses could penetrate all material barriers, their substance could not, and certain forms of electrical energy could wholly destroy them. They had the power of aerial motion despite the absence of wings or any other visible means of levitation. Okay, so the great race and the old ones, they all fly, but only the old ones have wings. I'm keeping this straight for you guys. You don't have to keep it straight. I've got it straight now. I know I was supposed to know already, and now I'm sure. Whatever I just said is what's. We can go back and look later if we need to know. I have it. I had it straight a minute ago. I really did forget which is which in the middle of that sentence just now. The great race and the elder ones. I mean, the old ones. Oh my God, they're both elder races. Oh my God, I'm gonna be tested on this. At the pearly gates of heaven, God will look me in the eye and say, "You told the world you were a Lovecraft expert for decades." And I'll say, "Yeah." And then St. Michael will say, expert. Oh my God, my connection is unstable. Can you guys see me? Why does this happen? Can you guys see me? Am I still not? There we go. You're doing great. Doing great, man. You're getting graded on a curve. That is actually I've talked about that in here before. Yeah, I buffered for a few seconds. I got a warning. I've had to call these streams a couple times with that. It only happens in these late night streams in this format. It doesn't, but a couple of times it's just done that aggressively until I just gave up. I should just keep reading. I should just keep going while I can. Quick. Um They had the power of aerial motion despite the absence of wings or any other visible means of levitation. Their minds were of such texture that no exchange with them could be affected by the great race. Um, there is a famous the original magazine that published this story. There's a cover illustration for these things. If you look up The Shadow Out of Time at Google Images, you'll see it. I think it's Amazing Stories and Not Weird Tales. Um, When these things had come to the earth, they had built mighty basalt cities of windowless towers and had preyed horribly upon the beings they found. Thus it was when the minds of the great race sped across the void from that obscure transgalactic world known in the disturbing and debatable Eltdown shards as Yith. The newcomers, with the instruments they created, had found it easy to subdue the predatory entities and drive them down to those caverns of inner earth which they had already joined to their abodes and begun to inhabit. Then they had sealed the entrances and left them to their fate, afterward occupying most of their great cities and preserving certain important buildings for reasons connected more with superstition than with indifference, boldness, or scientific and historical zeal. But as the eons passed, there came vague evil signs that the elder things were growing strong and numerous in the inner world. Okay, so they're not all elder things. Only the old ones are elder things. The great race are apparently not. Oh, God. But as the eons passed, there came vague evil signs that the elder things were growing strong and numerous in the inner world. There were sporadic eruptions of a particularly hideous character in certain small and remote cities of the great race, and in some of the deserted elder cities which the great race had not peopled, places where the paths to the gulfs below had not been properly sealed or guarded. After that, greater precautions were taken, and many of the paths were closed forever, though a few were left with sealed trapdoors for strategic use in fighting the elder things if ever they broke forth in unexpected places. Fresh rifts caused by that selfsame geologic change which had choked some of the paths and had slowly lessened the number of outer world structures and ruins surviving from the conquered entities. Um, you know, uh, hey, Kyle, it's worth actually interrupting again to point this out. I'm joking about the distinctions between elder things, great ones, old ones, the great race. Um, Understand in the 1930s when he was publishing these stories, in I think Amazing Stories and Weird Tales primarily, but right within each story, the background lore of the deep history of the planet and all these alien races is expanded more and more. Your only access to this lore would be to find those magazines. There wasn't, this is pre-internet. There's no, it's pulp magazines. You might as well be trying to find specific old porn magazines for all the, nobody's organizing this stuff. There's, I'm sure, newsstands with just piles and piles and piles of last month's and last year's magazines. You want to go looking through them. It was just like the early days of collecting comic books. So the nerds who were reading this stuff obsessively understand, they get together, like it's across 5 or 6 stories, the explanations of this stuff, and not all of them would have had access to all of them. It's like collecting baseball cards, or more like a little bit more like the Marvel movies. But if you didn't have easy access to all the other Marvel movies, so you would like get together and there would be that one TV show that only one guy had seen and could explain. He'd have to remember. He'd have to remember to tell you. Um, Very ahead of its time and very clever. So I'm joking about it, but it's cool. Um, the lore being so complex. But as the eons passed, there came vague. Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. I read that paragraph. The eruptions of the elder things must have been shocking beyond all description, since they had permanently colored the psychology of the great race. Such was the fixed mood of horror that the very aspect of the creatures was left unmentioned. At no time was I able to gain a clear hint of what they looked like. There were veiled suggestions of a monstrous plasticity and of temporary lapses of visibility, while other fragmentary whispers referred to their control and military use of great winds. Singular whistling noises and colossal footprints made up of 5 circular toe marks seemed also to be associated with them. It was evident that the coming doom so desperately feared by the great race, the doom that was one day to send millions of keen minds across the chasm of time to strange bodies in the safer future, had to do with a final successful eruption of the elder beings. Mental projections down the ages had clearly foretold such a horror, and the great race had resolved that none who could escape should face it, that the foray would be a matter of vengeance rather than an attempt to reoccupy the outer world. They knew from the planet's later history, for their projections showed the coming and going of subsequent races untroubled by the monstrous entities. Perhaps these entities had come to prefer Earth's inner abysses to the variable, storm-ravaged surface, since light meant nothing to them. Perhaps, too, they were slowly weakening with the eons. Indeed, it was known that they would be quite dead in the time of the post-human beetle race which the fleeing minds would tenant. Meanwhile, the great race maintained its cautious vigilance, with potent weapons ceaselessly ready, despite the horrified banishing of the subject from common speech and visible records. And always the shadow of nameless fear hung about the sealed trapdoors in the dark, windowless elder towers. It's worth mentioning here also that when this was written, the intensive, self-developing subgenre that is time travel science fiction stories didn't exist yet. Very few time travel stories, and they're usually about going somewhere and having an adventure and coming back. Lovecraft clearly did not think this through. Dude, if they have access to all the future, these eruptions, I don't, these events, they'd know. They wouldn't have to be vigilant. They would know. They would just know what day those guys were going to come. And then just always just send a guy back. But like, the Forever War by Joe Haldeman's decades later, the Long Tomorrow, a lot of the science fiction based on this very premise or set of premises is much, much later. I think 1950s is probably when. I really don't know what the first. This is actually a gap for me, believe it or not. As a scholar, I couldn't tell you which were the first science fiction stories to do complex paradoxes and loops. But they're after this. They're after the 1930s. It's post-war, post-World War II, almost certainly. Chapter 5. That is the world of which my dreams brought me dim scattered echoes every night. I cannot hope to give any true idea of the horror and dread contained in such echoes, for it was upon a wholly intangible quality, the sharp sense of pseudo-memory, that such feelings mainly depended. As I have said, my studies gradually gave me a defense against these feelings, in the form of rational psychological explanations. You know what's interesting though is this story embeds the obsessive clinging to a rationalist explanation in the face of relentless and increasing evidence that something supernormal is going on. He embeds it in the psychology of the character here, which I think if Lovecraft had lived 5 or 10 more years, he would have come back around to the side of Poe's influence that is about abnormal psychology and madness, and not just going crazy because something scared you, which is the kind of madness Lovecraft usually wrote about. Um, Being traumatized into permanent madness is usually what happens to Lovecraft characters. As I have said, my studies gradually gave me a defense against these feelings in the form of rational psychological explanations, and this saving influence was augmented by the subtle touch of accustomedness which comes with the passage of time. Yet, in spite of everything, the vague, creeping terror would return momentarily now and then. It did not, however, engulf me as it had before, and after 1922, I lived a very normal life of work and recreation. So, here's a good example of something I said the other night when I didn't have an example right in front of me. Uh, he does this thing sometimes, Lovecraft, in his later, better stuff, where he gives away how sloppy and loose it is with one word in a way that reflects well on the whole. So, like accustomedness, that's not a word. ACCUSTOMEDNESS. Accustomation might work there. And this saving influence was augmented by the subtle touch of accustomedness, which comes with the passage of time. Use, regular use. What happened is he's typing, manual typewriter, physical copy. He's working quickly. This is the best word he could come up with on the fly. He's got no thesaurus on hand for a vague concept that he's reaching for. He's just working too quickly to spend a week trying to remember the right word and asking his friends what it is. There's no AI to ask. So, but what I'm saying is the fact that, like, every 5 or 10 pages in this stretch of Lovecraft's work, there will be a made up word like that, like a slightly off, slightly made up word. The fact that he's doing that so rarely in this complex weave of sort of studied analog horror distant prose voice is just a reflection of how really good he is. The touches that are that sideways are so rare. I hadn't really noticed that before I read him out loud. I had noticed that every now and then he slightly makes up a word like that, but that's why he's working quickly. As I have said, my studies gradually gave me a defense against these feelings in the form of rational psychological explanations, and this saving influence was augmented by the subtle touch of accustomedness, which comes with the passage of time. Yet, in spite of everything, the vague creeping terror would return momentarily now and then. It did not, however, engulf me as it had before, and after 1922 I lived a very normal life of work and recreation. In the course of years, I began to feel that my experience, together with the kindred cases and the related folklore, ought to be definitely summarized and published for the benefit of serious students. Hence, I prepared a series of articles briefly covering the whole ground and illustrated with crude sketches of some of the shapes, scenes, decorative motifs, and hieroglyphs remembered from the dreams. These appeared at various times during 1928 and 1929 in the Journal of the American Psychological Society, but did not attract much attention. Meanwhile, I continued to record my dreams with the minutest care, even though the growing stack of reports attained troublesomely vast proportions. On July 10th, 1934, there was forwarded to me by the Psychological Society the letter which opened the culminating and most horrible phase of the whole mad ordeal. It was postmarked Pilbara, Western Australia, and bore the signature of one whom I found upon inquiry to be a mining engineer of considerable prominence. Enclosed were some very curious snapshots. I will reproduce the text in its entirety, and no reader can fail to understand how tremendous an effect it and the photographs had upon me. I was, for a time, almost stunned and incredulous. Let me point out again here how closely this foreshadows analog horror. This is what is it, Nick the Caver with the photographs? There's photographs in the story. He just Lovecraft didn't have enough control to put photographs in his story, or fake photographs. You can be sure he would have if he could have. Obviously, he would have done this in different fonts and stuff. The newspaper clippings. He would have done all the analog horror tricks, all the ARG tricks that his work foreshadows. Enclosed were some very curious snapshots. I will reproduce the text in its entirety, and no reader can fail to understand how tremendous an effect it and the photographs had upon me. I was, for a time, almost stunned and incredulous, for although I had often thought that some basis of fact must underlie certain phases of the legends which had colored my dreams, I was none the less unprepared for anything like a tangible survival from a lost world remote beyond all imagination. Most devastating of all were the photographs, for here, in cold, incontrovertible realism, there stood out against a background of sand certain worn-down, water-ridged, storm-weathered blocks of stone whose slightly convex tops and slightly concave bottoms told their own story. And when I studied them with a magnifying glass, I could see all too plainly, amidst the batterings and pittings, the traces of those vast curvilinear designs and occasional hieroglyphs whose significance had become so hideous to me. But here is the letter, which speaks for itself. Hey, Gandalf, good night. Merry Christmas. We'll see you soon. I'll be back tomorrow reading Foundations of Fear, though I'm not sure which story yet. There's a bunch of really good stuff in that collection. But here is the letter, which speaks for itself. 49 Dampier Street, Pilbara, Western Australia, 18th of May, 1934. Professor N.W. Peasley, care of American Psychological Society, 30 East 41st Street, New York City, USA. My dear sir, a recent conversation with Dr. E.M. Boyle of Perth. I want to do an Australian accent. I'm not going to do it. My dear sir, it's really hard not to do a bad Australian accent now that I've thought of doing it. Okay. My dear sir, a recent conversation with Dr. E.M. Boyle of Perth and some papers with your articles, which he has just sent me, make it advisable for me to tell you about certain things I have seen in the great sandy desert east of our gold field here. It would seem, in view of the peculiar legends about old cities with huge stonework and strange designs and hieroglyphs which you describe, that I have come upon something very important. The blackfellows here always been the blackfellows here the blackfellows have always been full of talk about great stones with marks on them, and seem to have a terrible fear of such things. I think he's trying to do some kind of Australian off-color racist language. Blackfellow is one word here. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Let's see, is it flipped or can you see? Yeah, right there at the top of the page. The blackfellows have always been full of talk. One word with no space, blackfellows, like cold beers. I don't know if you knew that. In Mississippi, it's one word. Get yourself a cold beer out the fridge. Cold beer, one word. The blackfellows have always been full of talk about great stones with marks on them, and seem to have a terrible fear of such things. They connect them in some way with their common racial legends about Boudet, the gigantic old man who lies asleep for ages underground with his head on his arm and who will someday awake and eat up the world. There are some very old and half-forgotten tales of enormous underground huts of great stones where passages lead down, and where horrible things have happened. The blackfellows claim that once some warriors, fleeing in battle, went down into one and never came back, but that frightful winds began to blow from the place soon after they went down. However, there usually isn't much in what these natives say. But what I have to tell is more than this. 2 years ago, when I was prospecting about 500 miles east in the desert, I came on a lot of queer pieces of dressed stone, perhaps 3 by 2 by 2 feet in size, and weathered and pitted to the very limit. Okay, he's Australian, so it wouldn't be feet. Again, that Lovecraft let that point slide, and his editors let that slide, is noticeable. But what's amazing is that all of this is so smooth and clean and well written, given that that kind of error is in it. Like, um, in his work, H.P. Lovecraft used the term blackfellas. You just looked it up to refer to Australian Aboriginal people. The term is now widely considered a slur. I figured it had to be. Yeah, like a slur you could. Yeah, I mean, I could give other examples of slurs that it would be almost darkies, actually, like on that level. Like people don't even know that word anymore. I think the last time that specific word, I saw somebody bring that up on the internet and nobody even knew. Like some YouTuber used it reading something and their chat had to tell them like, hey man, take it easy. That's a slur. Um I actually straight the famous one with Lovecraft is the cat named N-word man in the rats in the walls. And I just skipped it when I did these readings. Like the numbered readings in this format, I started right after the rats in the walls, and then all of the earlier short fiction I read in earlier streams at random. Um, you heard Blackfellows on maybe The Walking Dead. Lovecraft was pretty racist, but he outgrew it story by story in this very odd, studied, complex way. It's like he got I don't psychedelic drugs would explain it, but I don't think he was into psychedelics. He may have been. I'd like to ask ST Joshi if maybe there's a chance that Lovecraft was into mescaline. There wouldn't have been any reason for him to make a fuss about talking about that at all. It's just an obscure psychiatric drug that probably had a cult following among writers, artists, musicians everywhere. But like you can see traces of it in the culture. I think his friend Clark Ashton Smith was probably into mescaline. Whether or not Lovecraft tried it, I don't know. This Jungian psychology stuff, this obsessive probing in the subconscious, it colors all of Lovecraft's work, and you can see him talk himself out of racist paranoia story by story by exploring it in sort of restlessly probing ways because he's a horror writer, and so it's about paranoia and fear. So like, yeah, from Call of Cthulhu to here is this arc whereby here, like what I've just been reading, all that's horrible about it is the scale of time involved in that these thinking aliens aren't human. There's no horror other than that. It's science fiction. Like it, and like I've always said, it's this is his last major story. There's one story after this that's a straight old-fashioned gothic story, um, that is a rent payer, uh, and I think he would have moved forward and upward to something really. I don't know what he would have done if he'd lived long enough to address race politics in his own developing work with the mythos in light of post World War II race politics worldwide changing everywhere. Other great writers and artists suddenly cured themselves of their racism during the war, um, or other cultural issues related to it, like, um, for instance, Hermann Hesse flirting with the fascists in Germany, but also Will Eisner. Will Eisner's Spirit, I always think of Will Eisner's Spirit comic strip. He started writing and drawing it when he was 16. Um, Spirit had a black sidekick who's drawn real racist. It's just racist caricature. And he talks sort of racist. And he's dumb and superstitious sometimes. Um, Eisner was in the war. Um, and like in the war, he met fans who were black guys. Like it's straight up like the story was like he met fans who were black guys who were like, we love your comic strip, we love the character, but look, it's a shame he's so awesome because he's so racist. And so Eisner rewrote it and changed the character and then wrote him out when he took the strip back over when he got out of the war. Um, I don't know what Lovecraft would have done, but he would have done some shit to clean up his legacy. I mean, it's well known that he regretted being basically a shadow racist in his writing earlier and talked about it a lot. And he'd become a socialist and an egalitarian. He lived in New York City. And so the top line you always read is that he hated how filthy it was and he hated how it was all immigrants and like he didn't like living in the city. And all that was true. But he also got to be wiser about these things during the same stretch of his life. Um, on mescaline, he would have definitely had the possibility of being able to shadow racist, turbo, the subtextual racism. Like he talks about it in his correspondence a lot. I haven't read it much, but he was a gentleman and never impolite. And so like the veiled racism or the subtextual racism, like he wouldn't have denied it. I'm sure he carefully built that into these stories. The xenophobia, I guess, is the way to put it. Racism and xenophobia in his work is barely subtext, and sometimes it's not subtext. Um, this business with the black fellows, he's smart. That isn't just casual. Like it being what is now a mild pejorative racist slur that's so dated you looked it up. In this context, that's not, we're talking about pre-human alien races warring with each other that are just as intelligent as people, and him exchanging minds and bodies with one in a way that horrifies him. Like that's not accidental that that's here. 2 years ago, when I was prospecting about 500 miles east in the desert, I came on a lot of queer pieces of dressed stone, perhaps 3 by 2 by 2 feet in size, and weathered and pitted to the very limit. At first, I couldn't find any of the marks the black fellows told about, but when I looked close enough, I could make out some deeply carved lines in spite of the weathering. They were peculiar curves, just like what the blacks had tried to describe. I imagine there must have been 30 or 40 blocks, some nearly buried in the sand, and all within a circle, perhaps a quarter of a mile's diameter. When I saw some, I looked around closely for more and made a careful reckoning of the place with my instruments. I also took pictures of 10 or 12 of the most typical blocks and will enclose the prints for you to see. I turned my information and pictures over to the government at Perth, but they have done nothing with them. Then I met Dr. Boyle, who had read your articles in the Journal of the American Psychological Society and in time happened to mention the stones. He was enormously interested and became quite excited when I showed him my snapshots, saying that the stones and markings were just like those of the masonry you had dreamed about and seen described in legends. He meant to write you, but was delayed. Meanwhile, he sent me most of the magazines with your articles, and I saw at once from your drawings and descriptions that my stones are certainly the kind you mean. You can appreciate this from the enclosed prints. Later on, you'll hear directly from Dr. Boyle. Now, I can't understand how important all this will be to you. Without question, we are faced with the remains of an unknown civilization older than any dreamed of before and forming a basis for your legends. As a mining engineer, I have some knowledge of geology and can tell you that these blocks are so ancient they frighten me. They are mostly sandstone and granite, though one is almost certainly made of a queer sort of cement or concrete. They bear evidence. Oh, cement and concrete are italicized. I think he means to say that it's way older than anybody should have been mixing anything like that. You gonna come in, buddy? Both my cats are in the hall. What are you guys doing? You guys gonna come in? Why are you looking at me like that? Here, we'll solve this and give you some treats. Hold on. You guys want treats? Will that make up for this? There we go. Zoe, what are you doing? Come here. Zoe? Zoe, what are you doing? Come here. What is it, Zoe? What you doing? Why don't you want to come in? What's going on? There you go. There you go. Zoe's really sensitive. Sometimes her feelings are hurt and I don't know what I did. And she just sits looking sadly at me until I comfort her. Sometimes she thinks I'm laughing at her. I mean, usually when I am laughing at her. Oh, Turbo, I think that yeah, I mean, I think it's very likely that humanity is actually some kind of alien genetic project and that all the smart things are basically people, different kinds of people, yeah. But I mean, it's a weird, complicated subject. Um, yeah. Lovecraft is he's not actually interested in aliens, or at least not primarily. He's interested in projecting subtextual xenophobia onto what he's writing about here is the somewhat partially irrational fear of foreigners and their foreignness on the part of Americans. So, like these wars between different kinds of aliens, I mean, this is in the lead up to World War II, is when he's writing this. Like, it's the French and the Germans, or it's the Germans and the Poles, or the Russians. But do you see what I'm driving at here? Um, um, that people don't want to hear. Yeah, he is interested in the actual state of knowledge of archaeologically proscripted ideas about pre-modern civilizations. Lovecraft is clearly really steeped in the lore of in the and a lot of the research, what's interesting about that too is a lot of the research that was state of the art in Lovecraft's time is now widely known because of the internet. So things like the Nan Madol ruins, like Lovecraft like name checks Nan Madol I think once in one of his stories, maybe this one coming up. um but I'd never had a chance to see pictures or video of that place or get an explanation of exactly what it was until recently, relatively recently, the modern era, because of the internet. um yeah, no, it doesn't quite. There is something weird going on with that city or former city. He was right. Um, um, where was I? Right. They're mostly of sandstone and granite, though one is almost certainly made of a queer sort of cement or concrete. They bear evidence of water action, as if this part of the world had been submerged and come up again after long ages, all since these blocks were made and used. It is a matter of hundreds of thousands of years, or heaven knows how much more. I don't like to think about it. In view of your previous diligent work in tracking down the legends and everything connected with them, I cannot doubt but that you will want to lead an expedition to the desert and make some archaeological excavations. Both Dr. Boyle and I are prepared to cooperate in such work if you or organizations known to you can furnish the funds. I can get together a dozen miners for the heavy digging. The blacks would be of no use, for I've found that they have an almost maniacal fear of this particular spot. Yeah. Yeah, the blacks are useless for digging in this part of the desert. They're so superstitious. What's funny though is that, and again, Lovecraft is smart about this. He's now scared of the place. Like, I think he was saying like you can't trust what the black fellows say about these things and their legends and stuff. But he's saying on the same page, we have found the city. So like, which again, it is a really astute reading of how xenophobic race paranoia works. Like, it's both self-fulfilling prophecy and reflective of real truths and inverting real truths in bizarre, complex ways. The blacks would be of no use, for I found they have an almost maniacal fear of this particular spot. Boyle and I are saying nothing to others, for you very obviously ought to have precedence in any discoveries or credit. Oh my. Lovecraft had never met any real researchers or scientists. Oh, we just found a pre-human city, civilized. That one guy writing about the folklore brought this up in that one article a couple years ago. Let's make sure he gets credit for what we just discovered. Let's get in touch with him first, actually, before we go digging. That's funny. That's funny, Howard. The place can be reached from Pilbara in about 4 days by motor tractor, which we'd need for our apparatus. It is somewhat west and south of Warburton's Path of 1873 and 100 miles southeast of Joanna Spring. We could float things up the De Grey River instead of starting from Pilbara, but all that can be talked over later. Roughly, the stones lie at a point about 22 degrees, 3 minutes, 14 seconds south latitude, 125 degrees, 0 minutes, 39 degrees east longitude. I don't think I've ever looked at a globe to look at these coordinates. The climate is tropical, and the desert conditions are trying. Any expedition had better be made in winter, June or July or August. You know what? The 30s, Australia, he probably picked a spot there was just nothing, not even roads. Lovecraft looked at a globe and was like, yeah, out there. Ain't shit there. That's where it is. I shall welcome further correspondence upon this subject and am keenly eager to assist in any plan you may devise. After studying your articles, I am deeply impressed with the profound significance of the whole matter. The actual ruins are less impressive than his articles. Dr. Boyle will write later. When rapid communication is needed, a cable to Perth can be relayed by wireless. Hoping profoundly for an early message, believe me, most faithfully yours, Robert B. F. Mackenzie. Of the immediate aftermath of this letter, much can be learned from the press. My good fortune in securing the backing of Miskatonic University was great, and both Mr. Mackenzie and Dr. Boyle proved invaluable in arranging matters at the Australian end. We were not too specific with the public about our objects, since the whole matter would have lent itself unpleasantly to sensational and jocose treatment by the cheaper newspapers. As a result, printed reports were sparing, but enough appeared to tell of our quest for reported Australian ruins and to chronicle our various preparatory steps. Professors William Dyer of the college's geology department, leader of the Miskatonic Antarctic expedition of 1930 to 31, yeah, he's in Mountains of Madness. Ferdinand C. Ashley of the Department of Ancient History and Tyler M. Freeborn of the Department of Anthropology, together with my son Wingate, accompanied me. Okay, so Dyer was on this expedition before the Antarctic expedition. No, after. Poor guy. He went out again. He's not just sitting at home with a case of nerves, a bottle of absinthe, a bundle of memories, maybe a bundle of bags of something better than absinthe. My correspondent Mackenzie came to Arkham early in 1935 and assisted in our final preparations. He proved to be a tremendously competent and affable man of about 50, admirably well-read and deeply familiar with all the conditions of Australian travel. He had tractors waiting at Pilbara, and we chartered a tramp steamer of sufficiently light draft to get up the river to that point. We were prepared to excavate in the most careful and scientific fashion, sifting every particle of sand and disturbing nothing which might seem to be in or near its original situation. Stabworthy, I'm not going to let these reading streams get derailed much or for long, and I stick to the subject when we do get derailed as much as possible. So yeah, if I'm like in this format and hanging out over here, I'll still be reading. Especially at the end, like I try not to get distracted and talk at the end because people will fall asleep to my reading voice, and then if I start talking, it's annoying. So, Sailing from Boston aboard the Wheezy Lexington on March 28, 1935, we had a leisurely trip across the Atlantic and Mediterranean through the Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, and across the Indian Ocean to our goal. I need not tell how the sight of the low, sandy West Australian coast depressed me, and how I detested the crude mining town and dreary gold fields where the tractors were given their last loads. Dr. Boyle, who met us, proved to be elderly, pleasant, and intelligent, and his knowledge of psychology led him into many long discussions with my son and me. I think these references to psychology, by the way, at I now that I keep harping on this, he didn't have easy access to instant research the same way we do. I think while he was putting this story together, somebody had informed him of Carl Jung's work in this area, and he didn't have time to go read it thoroughly. Like he got a verbal briefing, but he didn't want to name check Jung. For one thing, his audience is not educated, so he's just making vague references. Which again, like I said, this is his last major story. He would have had time to read up on that before he came out with something else after this. Um, oh, we don't stick around and talk about it afterwards. Sometimes, yeah, stab worthy, but yeah, I try to stay on subject. Oh, this one probably, yeah. I mean, this is definitely a discussion kind of story. Also, like I said, it's the last. I think it's only a few more pages. Like I'm kind of committed now. It's actually a long reading, so I've done a lot of getting distracted. Hold on a minute. Maybe I should do another one tomorrow night. What are you doing? You don't need more treats. Quit digging in my drug door. You fat little fuck. Fat. Look at that mirror behind you. That's another hour's reading. Maybe I should stop. I'll read a little bit more. Let me find a place to stop. Yeah, okay, there's the end of a chapter. Okay, one more night's reading. Yeah, I'm finding also like with these readings, I don't want to stick to some kind of program too close because that's part of the point of doing it live is to hang out with chat and discuss. Yeah. So it means that like I just watch the clock. Like I definitely want to make sure I'm here reading for at least an hour every night. But a lot of times with the Lovecraft, it's gotten real quiet, and I can see there's 5 or 10 people here live, and they're just like I'm assuming they're all opiate addicts, nodding, dreaming their opiated dreams of tentacled monsters, conversing amongst themselves in unintelligible murmurs at the dawn of humanity, the cosmos. Personal pants for reading books. I insisted on getting one of those pizza cookies, chocolate chip cookies, for staying late today. Like I went on, like I worked open to close. I had to stay late because they didn't have a closing cook. Like they cut the orders off when we ran out of hand tossed, and at some point right at the end, I was like, I'm gonna make myself one of these cookies, and then I stood in the lobby and ate it before I came home. That was like my one Christmas thing was that cookie. Are there any of his works that get really abstruse and kind of more difficult and to grasp and wrap your head around? Well, his early stuff, there's some trippier. The dream stories are very strange. Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. But he doesn't come back around and tie that back into this more research and reality based weirdness that's going on in these stories. Merry Christmas, Colin. Discomfort and expectancy were oddly mingled in most of us when at length our party of 18 rattled forth over the arid leagues of sand and rock. On Friday, May 31st, we forded a branch of the DeGray and entered the realm of utter desolation. Oh, Turbo. Okay. I thought of a good answer. Actually, it took me a second. I don't have my books anymore. I may come back to these specific books I'm about to mention. H.P. Lovecraft was never published in book form in his lifetime. He slowly but surely accrued a cult following based on, to begin with, a series of really gorgeous limited edition hardbacks covered by published by Arkham House, named for uh, the young writer August Derleth founded Arkham House to reprint Lovecraft and Howard and Smith and other to reprint Weird Tales writers. Nobody made a cottage industry before him of reprinting pulp writers, at least not in these genres. So Arkham House published their first book was a collection of Lovecraft called The Outsider and Other Stories. The British, the raging eccentric British writer Colin Wilson published his first book at basically the same time, and it was also called The Outsider. So in reviews and press, they got tangled up slightly, those two books, The Outsider and Other Stories by Lovecraft from Arkham House Press. And I can't remember what the full title of the Colin Wilson book is, but it's his first book, and it's about archetypal outsiders as real world semi-literary figures. It's really interesting. Like there's an essay about T.E. Lawrence and the Seven Pillars of Wisdom. There's an essay about one of the great magicians, Crowley, or one of those guys. I can't remember which one, but it's an interesting book, real dry for Colin Wilson. But because of that, somehow Colin Wilson ended up reviewing the Lovecraft book, and he gave it a bad review. So the young August Derleth wrote to the young Colin Wilson to earnestly argue you didn't read Lovecraft carefully enough. He's a better writer than you give him credit for. So this led to Colin Wilson becoming the first mainstream pretentious literary advocate for Lovecraft's work. Colin Wilson ended up becoming a huge Lovecraft fan, and he wrote the first really advanced, complex Lovecraftian Turbo Christ. The book that you want that is like Philip K. Dick, Thomas Pynchon level intensive as literature and psychology and research. It's not Lovecraft himself. It's Colin Wilson's Lovecraft stories. He wrote a short story called The Return of the Loigor that's in one of those August Derleth collections. Then he wrote two novels that are basically about psychic warfare with disembodied aliens being waged by people working on expanded consciousness research with drugs and dreams and orgasm research. The first, I can't remember what order they're in. They're slightly detached from each other, but the two novels are called The Mind Parasites and The Philosopher's Stone, and they're both by Colin Wilson. And I would definitely read those in here if I live long enough to do it. I don't have my books anymore, or I would show you those books. And it's a trilogy with a short story called The Return of the Loigor that's in the August Derleth collection, Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos, which was an Arkham House book. And again, that's been reprinted, that collection. I would also read that in here. There's some really good stuff in it. Yeah, Turbo Christ, those Colin Wilson books I just mentioned, like I said, they should have a huge cult following as in that weird in-between space where like Robert Anton Wilson and Philip K. Dick and writers like that exist. But they're super obscure. They're really underread. Carlos Castaneda. I haven't read Carlos Castaneda since high school, since before I had a chance to try mescaline. Thanks for being here, by the way, guys. I'm going to read the rest of this chapter, and I guess this isn't the last Lovecraft stream. I guess tomorrow night's Christmas Day nights after midnight stream will be the last one, because there's another hour reading for the last chapter or two. Thanks for being here, everybody. 2:30. There's a lot of people in here for one of these streams, but I bet it's because it's Christmas Eve. Nice to see everyone. Hey, Zion. Right. On Friday, May 31st, we forded a branch of the Degray and entered the realm of utter desolation. A certain positive terror grew on me as we advanced to this actual site of the elder world behind the legends. A terror, of course, abetted by the fact that my disturbing dreams and pseudo-memories still beset me with unabated force. It was on Monday, June 3rd, that we saw the first of the half-buried blocks. I cannot describe the emotions with which I actually touched, in objective reality, a fragment of cyclopean masonry in every respect like the blocks in the walls of my dream buildings. There was a distinct trace of carving, and my hands trembled as I recognized part of a curvilinear decorative scheme made hellish to me through years of tormenting nightmare and baffling research. A month of digging brought a total of some 1,250 blocks in varying stages of wear and disintegration. Most of these were carven megaliths with curved tops and bottoms. A minority were smaller, flatter, plain-surfaced, and square or octagonally cut, like those of the floors and pavements in my dreams, while a few were singularly massive and curved or slanted in such a manner as to suggest use in vaulting or groining or as parts of arches or round window casings. Why is it that the core Gothic tradition has this obsession with architecture? Like, why is that? It's just there, all the way, going all the way back. Like, the Castle of Otranto has really careful descriptions of secret passages through, like, castles and under graveyards and how to get through them and get around in them. Like, there's like, yeah, I don't, I don't know. This reminds me of Dario Argento movies, actually. The way that Dario Argento movies will get hung up in the details of the architecture. Like, you think of Dario Argento and just sort of generally it's like blood, gorgeous girls and weird lights, and like architecture. I think old architecture might be a form of language or communication, telling a story visually. And also, it insistently brings back neoclassical vibes. Like, descriptions of architecture remind you. Something just hit the outside of my window. Like the whole window vibrated, and there's a roof out there. I can't see because it's backlit. There's lights in here. Where's my glasses? That must have been an animal, or maybe, I mean, I guess maybe there's a person out there. Hold on. Where's my glasses? The roof is on the other side. There's just no way anything could have. The tree is gone. That's right. There's just no. That must have been a bird. Like, there's just nothing else that could have been except a bird hitting the glass. There's nothing out there. Oh my God, my ear was up to that when I got that notification. God damn, man. Oh my God. I'm fine. I'm fine. There's nothing out there. God damn it. It's like a 20-foot drop and then like a 20-foot gap to the next house. It's not the side with the roof. That's over. I mean, how far down is that? I was looking right at it. There was just nothing, the whole, like see that blind there? The whole blind shook, like ripples. And the whole, like the glass behind the rip went boom. And it shook. The whole thing shook like if you'd picked up a cat and thrown it at the window from the other side, you might have gotten that. The whole blind rippled. Turbo, like the whole thing rippled. I thought a cat, like it would have done that if one of the cats had been sitting here and jumped down and hit it. It went like that, like, but the whole window went poof, and it did it from the other side. I was looking right at it when it happened. There wasn't a cat here. They're both on the other side of the room. I thought that there was a roof right outside this window. I honest to God, this is my room. You'd think I know. It's not, though. It's outside the bathroom window. That's around the corner. This is just the side yard. Not only that, the next door neighbor has a fucking motion thing on his fucking house. So when the wind is high, that light over there just comes on for no reason sometimes at night. It didn't come on. Oh, you know what? I don't know. It was well lit in here when it happened. So if that had been on, I might not have noticed. Okay, that freaked me out. That freaked me out. I'm a little freaked out. The fuck? I'm looking right at the window now. Oh, now you're coming over, Zoe. Now Zoe is like, yes. Yeah, that's where I hang out normally. Yeah. Yeah, turbo, or if there's another sound. Like I was looking right at it, but it just made a thump, like something hit the window. Oh my God, what are you looking at? Oh, my shadow. My shadow is freaking Zoe out. My shadow on the ceiling. Yeah, look, Zoe, it's a bird. It's a bat. It's coming for you. Wait, I can get her. It's coming, Zoe. Look out, Zoe, run. That thing's gonna get you. It's fine, Zoe. Don't be scared. I'm just fucking with you. Pressure wave. So that shit happened twice, Kyle? There were two shade sounds, one before I looked and then one when I froze? Because neither of the cats was there when I looked. I thought it was one of the cats jumping down. Okay, now that you say that, yeah. The first sound was the thing where there was a sound and it looked like the thing rippled. You see where the shade is now. It looked like one of the cats is where Zoe is right now and just sort of fell against it. And I thought like one of the cats had fallen. So I looked over to see if there was a problem, but this thing would have been wobbling. Like, see how unsturdy that is, and it wasn't. And both the cats were over here. I think Piewacket's not in the room, actually. Piewacket's not even in here. She's in the hall. Yeah. There were two, huh? It made two. And then I was looking right at it when it looked like something like about this big, thump, like a Nerf ball hit the window hard on the other side. The whole thing shook and the whole blind shook, but only on that side, not on that side. And this thing didn't shake. I thought a bird had hit the window or a cat had jumped against it or a dog. And I thought immediately I was on the other side of the house where that roof is just a couple of feet under that window. Like a cat could jump in and out of there easy if that window were open. So like that was my immediate thought, was something was on that roof and jumped against the window, like a dog or a cat or a raccoon or something. I wish it was. I wonder if my connection would allow me to just carry this outside. So you just went back and watched what happened, and what happened. You noticed all the lights in the room like dimmed about 5 to 7% immediately before you turned off the lights. I wish I could investigate. Kyle, I can detach the laptop. So here's the power. And now I got this. now I got this, and we can go outside. But look, my roommates think the place is haunted, and I don't want them getting weird about this. I don't know what I'm going to say to them. I've been not speaking to them because of the incident with the cat. But I'm just going to carry my whole laptop outside. I just heard something clunking around, either in the basement or outside on that side of the house. I don't know if you heard it. It rained out here. I can't turn the camera around. It's all wet. So Occam's razor says that has something to do with the tree on this side and how wet it is. So that's the side of the house where I thought. Oh, I'm walking back here. God damn it. It's back here. Oh, for fuck's sake. I made that noise. Okay. I don't know whether this wreckage just happened. I don't think it did, but there's a big chunk of a tree laying here. I don't know if you can. All right, I gotta hold the light on the. I don't know if I can. It's a big chunk of tree, and I'm walking over it. Several, so it looks like the yard people did that. Okay, this is the side of the house where the noise was. Yeah, I'm fucking walking all the way around. I wish I could show you guys better what's going on. Okay, so the motion light's not going off even though I'm walking right under it. So there's that. There's the window right there. There's nothing on the ground that looks disturbed. Nothing on the wall. Oh, it just looks normal. All right. All right, I'm going back inside. I'm suddenly really nauseous. Some kind of bird's nest in the tree up there. It's not. I don't see any birds though. All right, going back inside. Well, hi, Pie Wacket. Yeah. You guys are both down here, huh? Yeah. It's very talkative for you, Pie Wacket. I heard that thumping noise right before I went out the front door, and I guess they could have been in the basement, but Pie Wacket, don't act all excited about the basement. We're done. We're done. Nope. I am not going down to the basement with the laptop. Nope. We're done with that for now. All right. Can I? I'm looking out the window again from inside my room. There's the bed and the chair. I don't know how. Yes, kitty. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's just nothing that could have done that. What is it, kitty? Pie Wacket, why are you acting like this is all? Why must you be making it worse? Fire alarm, Sean. No. Oh my God, Sean, back up, back up and look. What is the timestamp for when it happened? Merry Christmas. Hey, Sean, Merry Christmas. Pie Wacket, what you doing, buddy? I didn't mean to scare you. It's all right. Pie Wacket is all over this too, and I can't tell whether she's like actually amped up about something spooky happening, or she's just like helping. Zoe's in too. Like they're like all excited about the little tour of the yard, but I don't know whether it's significant other than. Okay. What caused that? My room's on the second floor, Turbo Christ. I showed the window from outside in the yard just now. I was standing under it. Like, it's just a straight drop of like 15 feet to the lawn there. There's a heating vent thing related there that's not on. And there's an air conditioning related thing that's above it. It's got a little thing that drips water sometimes. It's not on. This fucking house, man. Oh. What's amazing is like this house does that's between that and the skyfish. Like, see, Gandalf, it didn't vibrate everything. There's two windows. Like, see how there's the other window? There were originally two of those screens. See, and the one that's pulled up, that's sort of sideways at the top, I pulled all the way up because the cats like the sun coming in from there. And the sun comes in and hits me and wakes me up in the morning at about 8:39. The sun comes in there. So that didn't vibrate. But on the side where the blind is, the glass behind it and the wood there vibrated hard, like something hit the glass. Like it looked like it vibrated hard enough that if it had hit the glass, it would have fucked up the glass. Like it looked like if somebody had gone up to that frame, the wooden part, and gone boom hard with their hands. Like I just straight thought somebody was on the other side of the glass, a person or an animal. Like I don't know what the look on my face was like, but that was like I immediately thought that because on the bathroom side, there's a roof out there and there could be a person up there. Like my immediate thought was, it's Christmas. It's somebody climbed up on the roof and is being weird at my window. Like that was my immediate thought. Because it was too much of an impact to be a cat. Like I keep saying a cat or a dog if you threw it against the window, but there's glass. It's one piece of glass. There isn't a cross piece. So nothing could have hit the glass in the middle that hard. It would have had to hit the thing. It rattled hard. The glass vibrated really like. An owl I would have thought an owl maybe. Yeah, Gandalf. There were no feathers out there. Yeah, no, I thought it was a bird. There is a big nest in the tree in the front yard. Something kind of big is nesting there, or there was a nest. There's a couple of nests back here. There are some kind of big birds in the neighborhood. And yeah, the sound and then the sound. Because that's how I knew for sure there wasn't a cat anywhere near it. Because I was looking right at it when it happened, and I was already looking for the cat. Like I was looking like where in the cat tree mess over here and where this chair is Zoe falling behind something, rattling the window. And then my second thought was the first noise, yeah, was like somebody, it was somebody climbing up to the window, like tap, like making a noise and then banging on it. I don't know what the look on my face says, but I really thought somebody was outside the window. We need to. I just walked outside the whole. My roommates are sure the place is haunted. Oh my god! I can't go get evidence of a haunting. Nobody will believe me. This already. If somebody who doesn't watch this channel saw this business, like if we sent it to like those clip channels that do the supernatural thing. They'd be like, what do you mean? The dude's a professional actor. He was just in a cryptid movie like last month. I, I'm sure. I'm sure. Like if you guys show that clip too to anyone else, you'll be like, look at the look on his face. I'll be like, this Rogan guy's clearly a pretty good actor, and you'll be like, yeah, no, but I watch him all the time. I'm sure it's authentic. And then they'll be like, see, he's laughing about it. Oh my God. Pie Wacket came rushing over to the window and the closet, and now she's rushing back and forth across the floor like she's chasing something. I'm not trying to hear this. I'm not trying to, I don't want this. I don't want this going on. This is not. Energies and entities can cause people to be very angry and outburst. Well, I mean, it goes both directions with that, right? Like, Turbo, you weren't here. That, I mean, it's been the subject of a couple of streams now that these guys, when I accused them of murdering their dad, they acted really guilty. Couple times. And I don't think that's even possible. He died in hospice care. He died in home hospice care. They might have neglected him severely in some way they feel guilty about. Oh my God, Pi is investigating over there now. Do you see? Gandalf, you were going to bed, weren't you? Did you, were you like falling asleep and then heard the soft thump? I don't know how long I was dead silent looking at the window. I'm really gonna have to back up and look at that. I remember thinking, like, I really thought there was a person or a large animal outside the window. I just didn't think that could be anything else. And there's a long moment where I was thinking that, and then there's a long moment where I thought, it's backlit, so I can't see out there right, but it didn't rattle, like it didn't, like what moved was so limited that it looked weird. Like it was just the blind and the glass and the part of the frame, the part that's faces the outside. Dude, I sleep in here. I fucking sleep in here, dude. Oh my God. I'm not turning the lights out when I go to sleep tonight. Were there any large footprints? Grass is was undisturbed, Gandalf, and I had the phone light in my hand, and it just rained. It had rained like while I was doing my live streams, so everything was soft, fairly heavily damp, Like it isn't like visible dewdrops on everything, but it's about like that. If there's any kind of footstep or anything out there, I would have seen it. Yeah, there was no, it was just clearly like, yeah, because of the way the water was sitting gently on the ground in the lawn. Not Bigfoot, not any animal. Like if a dog had walked through there, it probably would have been clearly visible. I mean, maybe not. It's night. I don't know. Like the grayscale color correction might not be right. I had a pretty good view. Like what's directly under that is some kind of, it has to do with the air conditioning or the heating system. There's a thing sitting right there, but the noise didn't come from down there. And I did hear something thumping around in the basement when I went walking on that side, when I went walking across the living room. Um, okay, I'm genuinely spooked. Like I'm just ready to turn off the stream now, but that that freaked me out. Okay, I guess we're done here. I guess we're done here. uh, I'm gonna, I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call it a night. Merry Christmas, you guys. Yeah, that seems appropriate to the occasion. Christmas is for hauntings. I'll see you guys in the plans for tomorrow. I am gonna stream the way I normally do at the normal times. Uh, I don't. I I kind of feel like coming in. Sean, I like you guys couldn't see what I saw, but it looked weird. That was some like Amityville horror type of shit. Like, um, will I drink eggnog? No. When is the naked stream happening? While Jelly is in school. It sounded like there was two bangs. Yes, Sean. Yes, there was. I was mistaken at first when I started talking because I immediately remembered it wrong, which is amazing because there's video. But there's, I didn't hear it right, Sean. What happened is that cat tree is right there that's sort of up against the window. And there was a soft bang. And I looked over and I thought it was Zoe was up on top of the cat tower. And sorry. I thought Zoe was on top of that thing and had fallen behind it or like jumped towards the bed in some weird like cat exploring way. Like and the blind moved, just the blind. But I think, but I'm not sure because I wasn't looking right at it. Like I was looking that direction, but when the first bang happened, I thought I saw motion there and I looked over and I looked for Zoe being dumb and there's no cat there. And then I realized, oh, Zoe is behind me and Pyewacket's not in the room. And then the whole frame shook. Like just the blind, the plastic blind, that shook really hard, like rippled hard, like something hit the whole thing. But that's all glass behind there. I thought like it had hit a cross piece, but the only thing that could have done it is if something just hit the frame hard. But even then, the whole blind, just the blind, but not this, not this, not this, not that, just the blind. Like it really looked like an invisible thing hit the thing hard on the inside. Yeah, I'm right here. Like, yeah. Hi, Pyewacket. Are you gonna come help, buddy? Yeah, you gonna help us figure it out? She heard me say Pyewacket was out there, and she came in. Yes, Pie. Are you gonna help me figure it out, buddy? I did hear another thumping sound. Uh, I don't know if the camera, if the mic picked it up, but when I walked across the living room downstairs, hold on. There was a sound from the basement to the side of the house where this is, where the window is. Like as I'm crossing, I said something about it right when it happened. Like I'm walking across and I'm like, there's another sound. Like, fuck, man, what is rattling around against the side of the house? Like that was when I was like, I gotta walk all the way around. Because I figured, like, I don't know, a raccoon might be in a window well or something over there. I don't know. Hey, Benz, you just missed some excitement. Uh, that was exciting. I had to go walk through the yard looking for invisible animals. I don't. Maybe it was Prancer. It was Rudolph's nose. It was like that special like children's window sonic boom that happens when Santa just re-enters. Oh, a window peeker. It's like it's too far off the ground, but that's what I thought it was, Bins. I really it I don't the glass didn't rattle right for the blind to rattle hard the way it did on this side though. It was more like something invisible went against the window. Like that's Bins, you can see me react to it. There's a sound and then there's a second sound. And the first sound got my attention. I was looking right at the window. And then the second sound, the whole window and frame went the boom and the blinds. And like I really thought somebody must be outside. And then I remembered that it's 15 feet off the ground. And I'm staring at the window for a long second, looking for some kind of sign of animal activity. And I went outside looking to see if a bird hit the window or something, and there's just no. I don't I feel like I'm going to shut off the stream and then the dead guy from Salem's Lot is going to come floating up to the other window, the big wide open one. Krampus and Jack Frost. I haven't seen either of those. I don't know if there's a Christmas horror movie I really have a thing for. Is Eyes Wide Shut? That's kind of close. Oh, To All a Good Night, the movie David Hess directed, is a slasher movie from 1980 that barely anyone's seen. It's really fun. It's kind of maniacal. It's the only thing that David Hess, the character actor, ever directed. Um, it's like a Santa Claus slasher movie. It's really fun. To All a Good Night. It was on Tubi last time I watched it. That it didn't feel natural or normal. Turbo, that it was weird. That was I don't. I'm not happy about turning the stream off. Like I'm looking at the window still. Like I don't. And when I went over to demonstrate like what happened, I did not want to touch that blind. Like I was like gonna show how it rippled, and I'm like I don't want to do it. All right, all right, all right. Um, well then, Merry Christmas, everybody. Yeah, I guess I should rewind that and look myself, but I'm kind of freaked out about it. So like I yeah, all right. I'm gonna end the stream. I'm gonna end the stream, guys. Hey, Nolan. Uh yeah. Um Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas, Bins. Yeah. Uh I'm gonna be back in here tonight as usual. Silent Night, Deadly Night, I kinda like Turbo. The original, it's too slow and humorless. It's just sort of dull. I mean, it's not bad at all. It's not particularly exciting either. Isn't there a remake of it? Didn't they just make a remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night? It must be terrible, or I'd be hearing about it, right? Some people, Terrifier 3, the clown movie, has a Christmas theme, right? Because some of my friends, like my friends who are also old horror people, are buzzing about Terrifier 3 be like the evil clown guy being dressed up as Santa Claus. and stop, like it's like they're ripping off the Tales from the Crypt, where Santa Claus has the axe. So yeah, that is what's going on there. Somebody I know who's really kind of famous, like I can't remember who, David Gregory or somebody, posted about how it's really committed to the Christmas theme. Like it's really insistent about the scary guy who's the character actor, like trying to inhabit Santa Claus and like jealously watching the family do Christmas stuff. And like the description sounded really interesting. I haven't seen it yet though. I've only seen the first one of those. It sounds to me like that's one. It's like Human Centipede. The middle one is the kicker. All right, I really, it doesn't help that it's so ominously underlit by this fucking lamp here. All right, I'll see you guys tonight. I'm gonna finish reading that story instead of becoming distracted by whatever that was. Merry Christmas, guys. Good night, everybody.